very good day to you. I've got good news for you. God always uses people for His work. Have you thought about it? He never uses an organization. He doesn't use a natural phenomenon. He uses people. People like you and people like me. Ordinary people who've got a heart for God and who are prepared to obey Him. Folks, obedience and faith. That's what God's looking for today from you. Obedience, when He tells you to do something, do it, and do it by faith. Because normally, He asks you to do something that you would never be able to do in your natural. Why? Because when He accomplishes what He set out to do through you, people will say that person could never have done that, and God gets the glory. So the Lord doesn't use groups of people. He used one man. His name was Abraham. That's right. He was the father of faith. Left his farm. He was a very wealthy farmer. Went to an unknown destination. He used a man called Moses, who actually messed up so big he became a murderer. He killed a slave driver. He used him to take the children of Israel out of slavery in Egypt, through the desert for 40 years, and eventually Joshua took them into the promised land. He uses people like Joshua. He uses a man called Elijah to stand up against that evil king Ahab. One man, not an army. One man defeated 450 prophets of Baal. One man. God used a man called David. He said, he's a man after my own heart. He's the apple of my eye. He used David to take the Jewish nation into a new dimension. God used a man called Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times. He still used him to be the head of His church. God used Paul, whose purpose was to hunt down Christians and to murder them. He was actually holding the coats of the men that stoned Stephen to death. You and I would have written him off. God said, no, that's my man. And he wrote 2/3 of the New Testament in this book. He was a missionary of all missionaries. He went to unknown territory. God uses people, especially in times like we live in right at the moment, where if God doesn't intervene, we are lost. I go to the book of Esther, chapter 4 and verse 14. Maybe, just maybe, you and I were born for a time such as this. Mordecai was Esther's uncle. He came to Esther and he said, Esther, Haman is going to exterminate the Jewish nation. You have to go to the king and ask him to intervene. Now, in those days, if you went to the king without an appointment, without the king summoning you, it was death immediately, even if you were the queen. Mordecai said to Queen Esther, if you don't go, God will use somebody else, but you and your family will perish. And that's where she said, well, if I perish, but I'm going. And God used Esther to save the Jewish nation. We are back there again, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to speak up. We've got to understand that God uses us as His ambassadors in the marketplace, in the workplace, in the school, on the sports field, in the old age home, on the farm, in that fishing boat. God uses people. And sometimes God will prompt you and say, tell those boys about me. And you say, I can't do that, Lord. They'll laugh at me. Well, they laughed at, they did worse than laugh at the martyrs. They actually killed them. But it didn't stop them. I want to encourage you to keep the course. I want to encourage you not to compromise. It's a very uncomfortable place to be seated when you sit on a fence, especially if it's a barbed wire fence. We need to make our decision. Are we going to be outspoken like Esther was and save that person's life? Or are we going to worry about our own character? God bless you. Do it.
For more information, please visit angusbuchan.com.